Hi, everyone. Hi, everybody. Welcome to MusicWise. We are so excited to welcome our guest for this week. I've been looking forward to this all week, actually much longer than that. Once he said yes, uh, we were sort of planning on what to do for this hour. So without further ado, let's welcome Roy Kaiser, the artistic director of the Nevada Ballet Theater. Hi, Roy.
Hi, Donato. How are you?
I'm hanging in there.
Yeah.
Technical difficulties aside, um, I was going to start with this video, and we will play these videos, but they might not be as long as we were hoping because the sound quality isn't as good as I always like them to be. But Roy, first of all, just briefly, you're now the artistic director of Nevada Ballet Theater. How long have you been in this position? And
Uh, I've been here since October of 2017. And it feels like, it was yesterday, and and at the same time, it feels like I've been here for a long time.
Well, lots of things have happened since
Yes,
you arrived.
that's true. That's true.
And where do you come from? Are you from the West Coast originally? What's your background a little bit?
Well, as a kid, I lived all over the country and finished up high school in Seattle. So I kind of felt like I was a West Coast kid.
I didn't know that. You went to
Seattle? I did.
Okay, Seattle. Okay, I just assumed you were always sort of the East Coast, sort of up.
No, I've spent my adult life there, but
yeah.
I spent my high school years in Seattle. My parents lived there for years, and I still have two brothers there. And then I spent a little bit of time in San Francisco, and then found myself back on the East Coast, and spent my entire adult life really back in Philadelphia.
So your background is so fascinating to me because you have been involved with dance probably from the moment you can remember, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
And why is that?
It's I'll give you the short story. I started taking tap dancing lessons when I was 4 years old. I'm the oldest of 5 sons, and when I was 4, my mother wanted to socialize me and get me out of the house and around other kids, and she had a friend that had a dance studio, small little dance studio in New Jersey. And she had a son my age, and she decided to start a tap class for just boys. So, no, you didn't have to deal with that, that uncomfortable issue of being the only boy in a class full of girls. And my mother always loved dance. She never pursued it. But she always loved dance and studied when she was younger. So, I liked it. I mean, even at 4, I liked it. And part of it was just, it was fun, right? I was hanging out with, I think there were 8 or 9, maybe 10, 4 and 5-year-old boys in class. And so I liked it and I stuck with it. And then as my brothers came along, they got introduced to it as well. It was just kind of like a natural. So we ended up performing. I did my first performance with one of my brothers at the age of 7, my first professional gig, and was a tap dancer for the whole first part of my life. And we performed a lot. We performed all over the country in various venues, and I got into musical theater for a while. Some of the videos I shared with you were, Gene Kelly and Donald O'Connor and Fred Astaire. Those were the people that, I wanted to be. And then in my teen years, I got introduced to ballet and fell for it hard. And I said, this is what I was meant to do. Little did I know that I was starting about 10 years too late
I mean, even though you were involved with dance, the fact that ballet, it just required a certain thing that was not part of your training until that point?
Yes, I had no balletic training at all. In fact, I refused it. You know, we did have people that worked with us as tap dancers, and even when I got into musical theater, that you know, encouraged me to take ballet because it would help. You know, it would help with flexibility and strength and timing, and I said no, that, you know, ballet's not for me. Yeah, I'm just not interested. I don't want to go into a studio full of girls and wear tights. So, but when I finally broke down and did it, I couldn't believe how quickly. First off, I couldn't believe what all of these 12-year-old girls were able to do just physically. You know, the strength that they had and the control that they had in what they were doing. But it had everything for me: the physicality, the musicality, very, very important. And it brought a different music sensibility to me, or sensitivity to me, I think. And I was fortunate that I was, even though I started late, I was male, which in our profession is always a commodity, right? There's always a shortage of men in the ballet world in this country. Mm-hmm. And I had really good teachers, and they really encouraged me, and they pushed me. And convinced me very early on that I could do this. So I went on. I had a career. I had a 13-year career as a principal dancer with the Pennsylvania Ballet, and then I was, you know, another stroke of luck. I was appointed to direct that very company, which almost never happens, and I did that for 19 seasons, 19 years.
Okay, I have a couple of questions. First of all, you mentioned you were lucky enough to have, and this has been a theme that at least I've focused on, or it's ended up becoming one of the focal points of these conversations. You mentioned that you were lucky enough to have good teachers. Who were they, and why were they good teachers for you? What were the things that you really took to heart, and why?
I think the most important thing that I learned when I started to study ballet, I mean, there were, you know, I had many good teachers, but one of my very first teachers was a woman by the name of Karen Irvin in Seattle. Mm-hmm. And she taught at the Cornish School in Seattle, which is a fine arts school that had been, is still in Seattle and had been there for many years. And Karen was, she was honest. I think that, you know, yeah. I mean, you know, if you messed up, she told you messed up. And if she thought you weren't working hard enough, she would tell you you weren't. And I think she stood 5'2" in heels. I mean, she was just a very petite little woman. She always had her hair back in a ponytail, but she was tough, and she was a taskmaster. But at the same time, you knew that she cared for you. So she taught me very early on what it would take for me to be successful, and in no uncertain terms. And I felt like when I left her, which she arranged, by the way, Lou Christensen, who was one of the Christensen brothers, founded San Francisco Ballet in your city.
Right. Yeah.
He and Karen were very good friends, and she arranged an audition for me with him. So, I mean, she kind of set me on my way towards a professional career, and for the school, and I wasn't ready for the company, but he auditioned me to come study at the school in San Francisco. But I felt like when I left, I kind of, I knew not only what was expected, but what I needed to do. I knew it was going to be a long road. I knew I was playing catch up in the beginning, but then at the same time, I had the confidence. She gave me the confidence that I was going to succeed, and more than technique, more than you know, the ABCs of what we do. I think that if you have an understanding of what it's going to take, and you have confidence that you'll be successful, you can't ask for anything more than that. And I had that. So I had it from the very beginning, and maybe I was even a little naive in the beginning as to
that helps. That helps sometimes.
and that helped. Yeah. But you know, I think I thought a little more highly of myself in the beginning than I should have. But it also enabled me to to have a certain level of success. And then, you know, there was another teacher at Cornish. Her name was oh my gosh, Noelle Mason, who was had just recently left the Joffrey Ballet. She was a teenage ballerina with the Joffrey Ballet, and she taught me a lot about music, and she taught me a lot about the emotion in the art form. That you know, it's not just about doing this step on count 8. It's about how you do it and what the intent of that is. And then when I went to Philadelphia, I had some wonderful teachers there. Lupe Serrano, who was a Cuban ballerina who danced with American Ballet Theater for many years. I studied with her for a couple of years after I arrived there, and she was, boy, you know, just you just learned by her example, and you know, you could just watch and soak it in. And even now, she's 89 years old now, and she's still teaching.
Wow.
She's in New York. She's still teaching in New York. Yeah.
So the other thing that I wanted to touch base on, because that moment in a dancer's career where you stop dancing, it's often a short, you know, shorter than other art forms. It can be this bright star.
Yeah.
And so many, you know, so many dancers, they'll transition perhaps to choreographer or a dance teacher, but to become a company director, to lead a company. Anyway, I guess what I'm getting at is all three of those are transitions into actually something that's quite different than dancing. And sometimes these are skills that you think you have, but you may not, and you have to learn on the job and come into them. You may start doing one, but end up doing another. How did that happen for you?
Yeah, again, you know, I do. This sounds so cliche, but I do feel at times like, you know, I was just the luckiest guy in the world. I performed with the ballet, with Pennsylvania Ballet, for 13 seasons, 13 years, which is a pretty good duration for a career. Some go longer, many go less. I think I read somewhere where the average career is 8 or 9 years. So, but I had gotten to the point where I was, I just kept feeling like I had done everything I was going to do as a performer. I had, you know, and I was fortunate. I danced wonderful ballets. I had wonderful ballets, you know, that had roles originated on me. You know, that's the apex for a dancer. And I also, for many years, probably shortly after I became a professional, I always had it in the back of my head that I wanted to direct. You know, as soon as I started to understand ballet companies and how they worked, I often thought I can do that. And I remember 4 artistic directors at Pennsylvania Ballet, and I remember initially it was subconsciously, but then I became aware of it. I was studying them. I studied everything, you know. I would watch them. I would watch how they ran a rehearsal, or how they ran class, or how they interacted with different dancers, how they interacted with staff. So I always kind of knew I wanted to do that. And about 3 years before I ultimately retired, I went to the director then. His name was Robert Weiss. He was a wonderful principal dancer with New York City Ballet for many years. And I just, you know, I maybe a little naively again, I knocked on his door and I told him that if he ever saw a role for me as a rehearsal director, or if he needed somebody to teach company class, or I'd be interested in doing that while I was still performing. And I think I don't know what he thought. I mean, we've remained friendly, but I never asked him. I don't know what he thought at the time. And nothing happened immediately. But a few months later, he started giving me small assignments, whether it was teaching company class or whether it was assisting in the restaging of a ballet that I had been involved in, or ballet that I knew. And so I started more and more and more. I started to do that, and balancing both front of studio responsibilities with performing. And then Ricky left the company, and the fourth artistic director I had in my career, Christopher Demboise, another New York City ballet dancer turned director, came in, and at that point, I think they gave me a title of assistant ballet master, which is basically an assistant rehearsal director.
Right.
And I was still dancing, and a pretty full load as far as performing goes. And he asked me if I would become associate artistic director, because Chris was a very good director. He was, but he was a choreographer. I mean, he really wanted to focus on creating and choreography, and he wasn't that interested in a lot of the day-to-day operations of the company.
Mm-hmm.
So I had this great on-the-job training. I mean, it was, who gets that, right? And he taught me a lot. I drew on what I had learned from previous directors, and became the associate artistic director with him. And then when he left, I think I was just in the right place at the right time. And the company wasn't really ready to hand everything over to me, the board of directors, I should say. So they appointed me as an interim artistic director for a year, and they did a search. They did a big national search, and then settled for me.
But there's a lot to be said about putting yourself in the right place at the right time,
yes.
and expressing interests. And then and then also there's that point at which other people say, okay, Roy has expressed interest. Let's give him a shot, see how it works out. And then it works out. And then little by little, you given a little bit more to do, more responsibility. It seems, this process, I kind of equate it to, it doesn't really exist much anymore, except perhaps in some of the trades, this journeyman process of slowly taking on more and more responsibility as you learn that skill. There's nothing, you can't learn that in a classroom. You can't learn that by getting a master's degree. You can only learn that in the dance studio or while you're conducting. And there's a lot to be said for that.
Right. In our profession, I agree completely. And nobody knows what's in your head. If you're carrying around a desire, and nobody knows that unless you articulate it. And the whole concept of a journeyman, in our profession, we have apprentices with the professional company. Mm-hmm. And I just think that year or two, it can be 2 years sometimes, I think the most formative years for young dancers, because that's their transition from being a student in a classroom or studio classroom to really understanding what it takes and how you function within a company. Mm-hmm. And those are two very different things. So
I want to give this a shot, and Alad said that he's ready to do this, because I want to jump back a little bit, because what you said, really something about being a young person and feeling comfortable dancing is something important to me. So Alad, can you play the Singing in the Rain video?
Good night, Kathy. See you tomorrow.
Good night, darling. Take care of that throat. You're a big singing star now, remember? This California dew is just a little heavier than usual tonight.
Really? From where I stand, the sun is shining all over the place. I'm singing in the rain, just singing in the rain. What a glorious feeling, I'm happy again. I'm laughing at clouds so dark up above. And the sun's in my heart and I'm ready for love. Let the stormy clouds chase everyone from the place. Come on with the rain, I've a smile on my face. I'll walk down the lane with a happy refrain, just singing, singing in the rain, dancing in the rain. I'm happy again. I'm singing and dancing in the rain. Dancing and singing in the rain.
Okay, I almost tear up every time I watch this clip, and I have something to share with Roy. I know I think he might be signing back in again, but I'll share this with everyone. I became obsessed not with music the first time. Hi, Roy again.
Hi.
I just was sharing with everyone that I don't usually tell this story because it's just not. I ended up becoming a conductor and a musician, but the very first thing I became obsessed with was with dance, and it was because of Singing in the Rain. And I was also 4. I was living in Las Vegas, and I begged my parents to sign me up for tap dance because I wanted to be Gene Kelly. And so my parents, they obliged, and my dad tells this story a lot better than I do because he actually choreographs the whole thing. So we show up. I think was a Saturday morning or Sunday morning. I think it was Saturday morning dance class. I had my tap shoes, and I was the only boy, as you were mentioning. And I thought, I thought there'd be other boys here. And the girls, they had their tap dances on. They had their pretty little dresses. And it was as if they had been dancing there, at least from my impression, they had been dancing their whole lives. They could tap in rhythm, and they could walk in the shoe from heel to toe, forward and backwards. And I could barely stand. I could barely do anything. And this is where my dad does the choreography of me like clumsily going back and forth with my tap shoe. And I was so embarrassed that I never went back.
Yeah.
But that was my first love, was tap dance. I wanted to be Gene Kelly.
Now, I feel like I know you pretty well. We've spent some time together since I've arrived in Las Vegas. I consider you a friend. You never shared that with me.
Well, okay.
What?
I don't know why. I don't know why I didn't. But because I tell you why. Because I didn't know I knew your background a little bit, but I thought, oh well, he's a ballet person. You know, he's always been doing ballet. But then when you sent this clip, and it's not like I think about this memory all the time, but when I watched that clip again, and it just sent me like the movie Ratatouille, where he takes a bite of the at the end. It goes back to when you're a kid, and that's what this clip did. And I just wanted to share that with you because it's just not. It is my first artistic impulse. That's what it was.
Right. Well, maybe that's why you're such a good conductor for dance.
Well, I've always had such an appreciation for it, and perhaps all I know is that I think that conducting and dance are like equal parts on either sides of this pole of music, you know, and when one conducts ballet or any sort of dance, you're sort of floating in between that pole of responding to music and creating the music through gesture. Right. Anyway, I just had to share that.
I'm so happy that you did, and it illustrates a point, though, right? I mean, your experience is not uncommon in this country. You know, the dance as an art form, I think, is especially classical dance, classical ballet is much more respected and accepted. In years ago, I had the privilege of serving on the jury for the Varna International Dance Competition, which is probably the oldest, most prestigious dance competition in the world. And it's an outdoor theater, so the competition wouldn't start until about 9 o'clock at night. So that, it got a little darker and they could use stage lighting and everything, and you're outdoors. And I was amazed night after night after night, and this went on for 2 weeks. You'd see 7, 8, 9-year-old kids there in the audience, and they'd be there until midnight. And they knew the performers, they knew the background, they knew, I mean, it's just part of their culture. And
okay, you're back. So it's just part of their culture.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that's not the case here. And I think that a lot of young men, young boys that might be inclined to go into dance as a profession have the same experience you had. So I've been working my whole career to change that perception, and I've done it like one person at a time.
But there's something to be said for you. In a way, this is sort of lucky in that you were in you were in a area of the country or a part of the city where there was a dance company or dance class that realized that maybe boys needed to be with boys for a little bit and girls needed to be with girls at a certain age, and then they can come together and work together, perhaps.
Right. Yeah. No, that's exactly right.
So, okay.
Go
Go ahead.
the only other thing I'll say is that when you asked me to send some videos, I think I mentioned to you in the email that I sent you, I kind of went down memory lane, and I was looking for videos that inspired me. So you'll of what I sent, there's only one ballet video there, because in my early years I was really inspired and driven by musicals and that type of dancing. But there's such a correlation. There's such a Gene Kelly studied ballet,
right?
And just happened to be born into that era where movie musicals were so huge, and he had a great success there. But there's not. I find for classical ballet, there is a lot of people just have this preconceived idea of what it is, and they feel like maybe they're not going to understand it, or they certainly think it's just not for them. And I would challenge anybody that loved Gene Kelly or Donald O'Connor or Fred Astaire to come to a ballet performance and not find something that resonates with them in the same way, because it's just a different vocabulary. It's movement to music.
Absolutely right. And I say the same thing about musicals versus opera versus symphony concerts. If you like jazz, if you like the response, then you'll probably love opera. You just, there's just one more, there's that foreign language barrier that can be intimidated. But once people realize that there's usually super titles that help you understand what's going on above the stage, or it's getting past these preconceptions, not the reality.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Exactly.
Speaking of these now that we know that these clips are going to work, we were talking the other day, and by the way, there's another thing you may not know. I grew up playing golf. My dad is an incredible golfer, and I don't golf that much anymore, but I still have my clubs, and I got the sense that you like to get out and play.
I do, and I don't get out as often as I would like. So maybe we have to make that a point when you come back to Las Vegas.
Tap shoes and golfing.
I don't know if I could do both at the same time.
So it reminded when we were having our one of our recent conversations, we were talking about golf came up, and then the reminded me of this one of the many iconic moments in the Fred Astaire Ginger Rogers films. And that's him, Fred Astaire dancing a solo number at a tee, and knowing that it wasn't special effects, that he was hitting these golf balls in the middle of his choreography, and you can see the golf balls flying off straight and at a distance. Yeah. And it's one of those moments in film that's like, really? Did that really happen?
Right.
It's so perfect. Right. What you mentioned in our past conversation about this was that you feel, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you felt that of all the dancers you've seen, Fred Astaire was perhaps the most natural dancer you know.
He is without a doubt the best, most natural dancer in any dancers out there. But there was something about, he had insane musicality. And in this clip that you're going to show, it's not only that he's tap dancing, but even the way he uses the club, whether he's hitting the ball or whether he's tapping the club on the ground. It's the whole thing. Right on the money.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think he's the most natural. I love Gene Kelly. He was a little more athletic, which I like and admire as well. There were so many wonderful ones. And then when you look at the big ballet dancers, Rudolf Nureyev was an early inspiration to me. He was all about passion. Baryshnikov just had this pristine technique and also was very musical. So there are things to admire in so many different dancers, but I think for my money, I think Fred Astaire, hands down.
Well, let's watch this clip. For those who've never seen it, you're going to be completely astounded.
There you have it.
I mean, any golfer who watches that clip is just, I mean, the jealousy factor is just to know how that's so difficult to, even if you're just standing in front of one golf ball and getting the, getting ready and doing the right grip and so on and so forth. I mean, it's just, I don't know how who knows how many takes it took to make that happen. If it's one, I wouldn't be surprised because he's just such a genius, but what a great moment.
It's a great clip. Yeah. He was really known as a perfectionist.
Yeah.
And he rehearsed. Yeah, there's also another, I forget the film now, but he does this whole dance with a hat rack.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen that?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, and it, after a while, you feel like he's dancing with a woman. So, the way you forget that.
He almost makes he almost makes it look like the wood is bending when he's moving it back and forth. It's incredible. Yeah. Okay, let's talk about your time now in Las Vegas with Nevada Ballet. How did that come about? You were in Philadelphia and
I was in Philadelphia. I had left Pennsylvania Ballet after 19 seasons. My last season with them was their 50th anniversary season, and it was a big year for us. We had so many successes. We were at the Kennedy Center. We toured to the Kennedy Center in Washington, the National Arts Center in Ottawa. We had a national broadcast of a PBS documentary on the company and the history of the company. And we created, I want to say 4 or 5 new, original works throughout the year. It was a big year, and it was time. It was just time. Yeah. So I stepped down in 2014, and then I had, one of the curses of being a professional ballet dancer is that oftentimes the joints in your body do not hold up. And I ended up having a hip replacement operation right after my wife was like, okay, you have to get your hip operated on, and you should take a year off.
Good advice, but painful advice.
It was good advice. But I got that done, and I didn't quite take a year off, but I did take some time off, and we were able to do some traveling, even though Melissa was still very much working at her position. And then I was doing some teaching and guest teaching around the country, and I was doing a little bit of consulting work. And I was actually pretty happy. I thought, I'm kind of in charge of my own schedule, and I did miss the interaction with people, because even if I would go into a group and do some consulting work, my time I was there for 3 weeks or 4, whatever it was, and then you say goodbye. So you didn't have that ongoing growth. And then I got a call from the search firm that was doing the search for Nevada Ballet Theater, and he talked to he told me about the company. I was aware of the company. I actually have known James Canfield, my predecessor as artistic director. I've known him for many years, but I wasn't really familiar with the company. Mm-hmm. I wasn't familiar with the work that they were doing. I hadn't been to Las Vegas in probably 20 years, but prior to that. So I had no appreciation for what Las Vegas has become. So I came out and met with people. I met with Beth Barbary, the executive director here. I met with Nancy Housels, one of the co-founders of the company, and a couple of board people, my first trip out. And the more I met people and saw what was in place here, and the more I even met people in the greater community, the more I felt like I could do something here. I could make a difference here.
because it's such a it is a difference. It's a different city, different culture, West Coast versus East Coast. It's to take on that challenge. I commend you. I mean, it's wonderful that you decided to dive in.
I found it really exciting.
Yeah.
I fell in love with Las Vegas immediately, and I had like many people that haven't been to Las Vegas for a while. You have no concept of the community that's here.
Mm-hmm.
Over 2 million people live here, and there's a community, and there's a symphony orchestra, and there's a ballet company, and there are a bunch of small theater companies, and we're going to have an art museum here, so hopefully sooner rather than later. Mm-hmm. And we have sports teams, and when the Golden Knights started in 2017. They started right about the time that I started here. When I saw how that took over the city, and the city pride. So I looked at it as just a great opportunity. And the Smith Center, to have the Smith Center, this beautiful, you and I are like two of the luckiest men in the world to get to work in that facility. And I know you've been in as many theaters as I have around the world, and it's tough to beat this one. They really did it beautifully, and to me that signified a commitment to the arts, to the performing arts. And I know that they have a big ballet season, but they do have the orchestra. They have us. They have other things in there that hopefully will just help expand our presence in the city. So I came into it with no hesitancy whatsoever. And my wife, I was really lucky that my wife supported me in doing it, because Melissa was very tied down to Philadelphia. She had a job she loved. She didn't have anything here. She's mid-career, so she's like, she didn't want to just pick up and go without knowing what was on the other side for her. Mm-hmm. I knew she liked Las Vegas, and she made one of the trips with me out here, so that wasn't an issue. But then, again, being like really lucky, things worked out for her as well, and she found a position in Las Vegas that she's totally in love with, and she's very good at it. So we're here. We're here for the. and the other thing that attracted me is that Nevada Ballet Theater will be celebrating its 50th anniversary. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. This is next season.
Right.
Yeah. So I've done that, and I think that it could be. It's not only is it a milestone for the company, but I think there's great opportunity in that, mm-hmm. both for the city and for the company. So I'm really excited to realize that as well.
So speaking of plans for the future for the Nevada Ballet, where did you see it when you began? And again, now that you have the looking forward towards the 50th anniversary, what were some of the things that you feel that you could contribute, that you could help grow, nurture, change? How did you see the Nevada Ballet Theater as it was and as it is today?
Well, it's the company's had a long history. Obviously, we're going into our 48th, or we just finished our 48th season. Each director again brought something different to the table. When James was here, he was a choreographer, and him creating new work on the company was very important to him, and they did a lot of that, especially prior to going into the Smith Center. Once we moved into the Smith Center, then the challenge became, how do you fill this big glorious hall full of people that want to see what you're doing? So we are looking to bring in some larger ballets. Some of them have title recognition. Some of them don't, but they're still larger works that I think would be very appealing to our audience. And then I'm also really interested in new work, and we've created an original work in 1, 2, 3 seasons. When I first arrived in 2017, the season was set.
Right.
But there was a slot on our February program for a work to be announced, and so I had a choreographer, very talented choreographer friend of mine, Matt Neenan, created new work right after I arrived, and you know something about that work. He used Michael Torke's music, and you actually made that connection for me with Michael, which was terrific. And then Niccolo Fanti, who you conducted that program. And then just this past February, we did a new work by Krista Baker, who is a company artist. She's been with the company, I believe, 15 years. And has done a lot of work with for the choreographer showcase, our collaboration with Cirque du Soleil, but she had never done something for the main stage. So I was very happy to commission her to do something, and it turned out beautifully.
You sort of answered the question already, but there was a question that just popped up on the feed. 2 questions actually. How often do you create original choreography is the first question. And then the second question is, what inspires you to choose certain music for your creations?
Yeah. Now, I'll answer the first question first. To date, I've been doing 1 original work a year. We've been bringing in a lot of new work that's new to our audience, but it's existing work. But 1 original creation from scratch per season. I mean, I don't choreograph, so I don't make the musical choice. I will work with a choreographer. As when I bring them in, I will work with them to shape something that will fit with the program, because they're typically, 1/3 of the program, the new works that we've done so far. And so I do want it to, you don't want anything to clash. You want it to make sense as far as music, as far as musicality. You want it to make sense. The story with Matt was that I really just needed a short piece that first season. I needed something under 15 minutes long to fill out a program that had already been put in place. And we, again, this just goes back to like things just happen for a reason. I called him. I was so happy he was available to do it. His partner was actually in Las Vegas at the time. Matt was still back in Philadelphia. His partner opened the show at the Cosmo, Opium. He was one of the original cast members of Opium, so he was here. He said, "Yeah, I'll come out. I'll do it." And I said, "Okay, I need 12 to 15 minutes." He said, "Okay." And then we didn't talk for a couple of weeks. And then I was at a party with you, and we were talking about Michael Torke, because I think you had just done one of his pieces.
Yes.
I don't know if it was a premiere or.
No, it was just. I think it was actually. The piece that's been done so many times at New York City Ballet. I think it was first.
Ash.
Ash, that's right. I had just done Ash. Yeah.
Yeah. So we were talking. I said, "Oh," and I said, "That's great. Michael." I said, "I've never met him, but he's done a lot of work in the ballet world, both original compositions, and choreographers are drawn to his work." And he said, "Oh yeah, no, he's a great guy, and he lives in Las Vegas." And I said, "Does everybody live in Las Vegas, right?"
I think those were your exact words.
I think they were, yeah. So I it didn't occur to me at that moment, but then a few days later, I was in my office, and I thought I would check in with Matt, the choreographer, and I said, I asked how he's doing. He said, "Fine." And I said, "Listen, the musical choice is yours, but I said, just an FYI, Michael Torke lives in Las Vegas. So if you're a fan of Michael's work, and if, I said there might be some synergy there to there we are.
There you are. Hi.
There we are.
Some synergy too.
So,
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just the fact that Michael's here,
Yeah,
and
right.
you know, and so Matt said to me, and this is the God's honest truth. He said, "You're not going to believe this," but he said, "I've been listening to this piece of music by Michael. It's called Until December, and it's 12 minutes long, and I love it." he said, "I want to do this." So, and then you connected me with Michael, and I connected them. And Michael was actually, you know, even though it wasn't an original composition, he was very involved. He came and watched rehearsals.
That's wonderful.
Because he's a big dance fan as well as an incredible musician, composer. He came to the orchestra rehearsals and, you know, worked with the musicians a little bit and our conductor. And so it just turned out to be, and the, you know, the ballet ended up being beautiful. So sometimes that's how things work. But the one thing, even though I'm not choreographing and I'm not choosing music, the one thing that is really important to me in choosing choreographers is that they have a very clear, innate sense of musicality. And that sounds a little funny, because it might sound odd to some people, but I've known dancers and I've seen choreographers work that it's not musical. Or it just has a very off-center, a different musicality than what resonates with me. And, you know, regardless of the genre, regardless of the style of dance. So, so that's something that's, as I'm commissioning people, that's very important to me.
I want to play before we end the hour. We have enough time to play a clip and comment on it, and it ties into what you were just talking about musicality. And we were also talking about this film that has been recently made by Ray Fiennes about the beginnings of Rudolf Nureyev's career, and the film basically ends when he defects to Paris in the airport, famously in the airport in 1961. And this idea that artists, dancers, you know, there are certain qualities of that are, you know, identifiable from dancer to dancer, regardless of the genre. We've talked about Fred Astaire, we've talked about Gene Kelly. You mentioned Baryshnikov and Nureyev, and this clip that we're about to watch of Nureyev, I was so struck because for me, he looks like, in general, if you see pictures of him, photographs, he looks sort of tall and lanky, and maybe just may not give the impression that he would be so absolutely beautiful and fluid on the dance floor. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
I know what you're saying. Yes.
And this clip is from 1963, 2 years after he defected, and I think it's a clip from London. When he was with famously in that one of the most famous duos of all time, Margot Fonteyn and Rudolf Nureyev. This is of him dancing a solo piece. So let's watch this, a little clip of this.
Great. There it is. So I'll tell you about that clip. Maybe within a month of when I first started studying classical ballet, there was this wonderful theater in Seattle, an old movie theater that showed arts films, and they showed that. And I mean, my chin was on my lap. I was just like, you know, how does he do that? And, but he was, and I saw him a number of times live in person, but later in his career, and he didn't quite have the physical prowess that you see there. Excuse me, but he had this incredible magnetism, and it was like all he had to do was walk out on the stage, and you couldn't take your eyes off of him. I mean, he had this command, and he had that in his dancing, but even in his later years, right up to the end, he just had this amazing magnetism that drew you in, and he performed with Pennsylvania Ballet once when I was there. He did a gala for us.
Wow.
And they had to close down Locust Street, which is the side of the theater where the stage doors. They had to close it down because there was such a crowd waiting to meet him, waiting for him to come out. I had never seen anything like that in Philadelphia before. And yeah, I mean, he was magic and just so inspiring at a young age.
What I so love about that clip is everything about his technique is at the service of the art. No matter how minuscule the movement or seemingly minuscule the movement, everything is connected. Everything is for a reason. And
Absolutely.
It is so intensely beautiful to just see that those few minutes.
Yeah.
Roy, someone from Austria. Good evening from Austria. Eldertraud Oster, that's so sweet. Someone is watching from there. Roy,
Great.
Thank you again so much for this hour. I so appreciate, I want everyone to know, I so appreciate our collaboration, our collegiality, and our friendship. And it's been inspiring for me, and I know for so many other people to get to know you and Melissa, and it's a gift to Las Vegas that you're both now. We're all together there, working on these lovely and inspiring projects together.
We're all together here, and we're going to have. I think we'll find some great opportunities going forward to work together. And thank you. You've been such a great friend, and you were so welcoming when I arrived, and we'll continue that.
Thank you, Roy. Thank you, everyone, for watching, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.